Hi, I'm Jilly G. Welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how to make a gluten-free almond apricot bread. This is what's known as a quick bread. Something like a banana bread or a zucchini bread. Or we could just call it a fruit and nut bread. I'm using apricots and almonds. That really is one of my favorite combinations. But if you don't like either of those, you could substitute with something else, and then it would be your own fruit and nut bread. So really not very many ingredients go into this. I do have my oven already preheated to 350 so I could toast my almonds. And then I've got a 9x5 loaf pan here, and I've been kind of greasing it with a little stick of butter. And then we will flour it as well. If you don't have a loaf pan this size, you could use two 8x4 loaf pans, and then you would just fill each of them probably about halfway full. And for that matter, you could even make these into muffins. Once you've got your pan all buttered, I've got probably a couple of tablespoons of flour here. Gluten-free flour. You always find out how well you greased your pan after you flour it. And it always makes a mess. But I don't really want to dump this extra flour into my flour bowl. I already have that measured out. And for that matter, you could have just taken a couple of tablespoons of your flour here and floured your pan and then just dump it all back into your flour bowl. But I didn't do that. So here we go. So first up, we're going to mix our dry ingredients. And I've got 2½ cups of my gluten-free flour. And then in this bowl, I've got 3½ teaspoons of baking powder and 1 teaspoon of salt. We'll just mix that together. Quick breads are always so fast and easy to make. And they're delicious. And they're so versatile. If you have just kind of a basic quick bread batter or mixture, then you just add whatever you like. So dry ingredients are all mixed together, and I'm going to start chopping my almonds and my apricots. We need 1 cup of chopped almonds and 1 cup of chopped apricots. And these are dried apricots. Of course, if you dry your own, use those. This brand I really do like. There's nothing in them but the apricots. A lot of dried fruit you can get has a lot of added sugar to it. So I always try to get ones that don't have any extra sugar or coloring or anything else. And of course, I always make sure they are gluten-free. And this is probably more almonds than I need, but that's all right. And I thought that would be enough for 1 cup. But I'll keep going. So that's just barely over 1 cup of toasted chopped almonds right there. I'm going to move these aside, get these out of my way, save these for something else. And then this was an 8-ounce bag of dried apricots. And then I usually just cut them in half and then just in little bite-ish size pieces. They're a little bit bigger of pieces than my nuts, but that's all right. We could say maybe about the size that a raisin would be. And it looks like I'm just over my 1 cup for my chopped apricots as well. Not many left. You could just have a snack or make granola bars, something like that. Or double the recipe and make 1 loaf and then make muffins. You could eat one, put one in the freezer. I'm done with my cutting board. Chopping nuts always makes a mess. But here, we'll just add that back into the bowl. So I have 4 tablespoons of butter, half a stick, and it's really firm, even though I took it out of the fridge a little bit ago. We do want it to be room temperature, or at least soft enough that we can whisk it around with the honey. And that looks pretty good right there. Maybe. Maybe not enough. Let's go a little bit more, like 10 seconds. And there's a lot of quick bread recipes that call for vegetable oil. And you could do that. It would be about 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil instead of the 4 tablespoons of butter. But I really like to make quick breads with butter. My butter is soft. It's just getting stuck in my whisk here. And for that matter, you could use coconut oil. The one thing I have noticed with coconut oil is sometimes it will create kind of a greasy texture in your baked goods. So if I'm going to use coconut oil in something like this, I will usually do a combination of coconut oil and butter. So to my butter, I've got 1/2 cup of honey. And then I've got 1 teaspoon of molasses. You could leave this out altogether, but the original recipe is 1/2 brown sugar and 1/2 white sugar. And so I like to add in just a little bit of molasses to give it that flavor that brown sugar does. But you could leave it out if you wanted to. And of course, as always, I will put the equivalents to sugar in the description box with the recipe. So now we're just going to mix together our honey, our butter, and our molasses. Once you've got that mixed together, I do have 2 eggs here. And of course, everything is always at room temperature. There's my 2 eggs. You could mix them in one at a time, but this is fine. And before I keep mixing, I do have 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and then I've got 1/2 teaspoon of almond extract. Once you've got that all mixed together, I do have 1 1/4 cups of milk. I'm just going to pour this in, and we're not making a cake, so we're not going to need to alternate this with our dry ingredients. I'm going to switch to my spatula for the dry ingredients, so we're just going to go all in one. And with quick breads like this, you want to stir until just combined. But we still have our almonds and our apricots to mix in. So when it starts to look like this, where you can still see some flour, I'll add in my almonds and my apricots. And if you happen to overmix your batter, it's not a big deal because there's no gluten to develop. So we're not worried about overmixing. Once you've got that all mixed together, bring over your loaf pan and just dump it in. And then I just spread it out. You want it to be kind of in an even layer. Nothing to it at all. Quick breads are so fast and easy to throw together. The longest part of making a quick bread is the bake time and the cooling down time. So this goes in the oven, again at 350 for about an hour. I'll start checking it at about 50 minutes and then we'll see. My bread went for almost an hour exactly. You want it to go until a toothpick comes out clean. You want your bread to cool off for about 10 or 15 minutes. And it looks like I did a really good job of greasing and flouring my pan. But now we want to take it out of the pan and let it cool completely. Oh, look at that. Very carefully flip it back over. I wish you guys could smell this. It smells so good. So now we just want this to cool off to room temperature at the very least. My bread has been cooling for about an hour and a half. It's room temperature. You don't want to cut a quick bread like this when it's still hot or even warm. So let's cut into it and see what we've got. And I always like to use a bread knife. It sure looks good. You can see all of the apricots and the almonds in here. I always like the end piece. So let's give it a bite. It smells really good too. It's really good. And quick breads like this, they're nothing fancy at all. And it's not overly sweet, which is also one of the things I really like about quick breads. And you can taste the apricots in there. And the nuts, they give it a really good crunch. And even though I made this into a loaf of bread today, I really like this as a muffin. This bread is delicious. And it tastes exactly what it is, apricot almond bread. And I mentioned earlier, you could put whatever fruit or nuts you like in this, but then it wouldn't be apricot almond. But you really could. Use the basic recipe and change up the fruit and nuts, and like so many of my recipes, you can change it every single time you make it. And if you don't have a loaf pan this size, you would just divide the batter in half into 2 smaller loaf pans. But it really is so delicious. It's a really moist bread, although I like it with butter slathered on top. Or in the middle, whatever part you cut open, I guess. And quick breads like this, they always freeze so well. So if you make 2, if you have 2 smaller loaf pans and you end up with 2 and you don't want to eat them both right away, then you could freeze one for later. Let me know what you think if you make this recipe. You can have it as a breakfast muffin or just a slice of bread, and it's really not overly sweet. But thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any questions or comments, let me know, and I'll see you on the next one.